Hello, this is Michael Feely, and welcome once again to my weekly podcast called The Secrets of Da Vinci. And of course, that is Leonardo da Vinci. Last week in my intro, I kind of set the scene as to where I hope to take this podcast. It is to take you to places never before reached. It is to take you into information never before known. And I will reveal many great secrets to you. I told you that I'm a former police officer in the UK who signed up for a 30-year career. But due to all of the paranormal and supernatural things that were happening to me, around about year 17 of that career, I had to leave because I was no longer the same person. I never saw the world the same again. I could not exist in a mundane third dimensional environment. So I quit with nothing to go into, no idea which path I would take, no idea where I would be taken in the future. But over the coming weeks and months and years, that became perfectly clear. So today, I'm going to talk a little bit about the sacred place we call Egypt, although today will only be in brief. These are subjects that I will continue to return to, giving you more and more information each time. So Egypt sees many millions of tourists each year. They all want to know, what is it all about? What does it mean? What has been left for us to decipher? Who actually built them and why? Each of these millions of tourists want to know the answer. And quite frankly, they're not given the truth. They're never given the truth. I once contacted the Cairo Museum in Egypt, and I said I've made some quite brilliant, deep revelations in relation to this place. Can I come at my own time, on my own expense, and discuss with you what I've deciphered, what I have found? And their reply was, no thanks, we're mainstream. So I contacted the Egyptology department at the London Museum, and I posed the same request. They got back and just said, we'll pass your details on to the appropriate person, and they will get in touch if they wish to speak to you. You may well be really surprised, but I never received any request to speak to them. They never even got back to me. Just what is it that they're scared of? What is it that they don't want people to know? And of course, the enemy has always been the truth. It is the same as when I was actually banned from doing a group tour at Rosslyn Chapel. It had been previously authorised, but as soon as the director, etc., found out about it, they cancelled it because they don't want people to know the truth. So it is really like being in the spiritual realm. To me is like being in the special forces. And what I mean by that is special forces are always working behind enemy lines. Now, when we begin to speak about the truth, we are behind enemy lines because we live in a reality, we live in a society that tries its best to stifle the truth and stifle all those who are speaking about it. So Egypt is something that is personal to me. When I've traced back my family bloodline, it's been traced back all the way through Celtic Irish kings. And I traced it back even further to Egyptian royalty. So my direct bloodline is Merit Amun, who was also known as Queen Scotia, King Tutankhamun, and his parents, Nefertiti and Akhenaten. So I am a direct descendant of Egyptian pharaohs. So for me, Egypt is not only a fascination in terms of its knowledge, but it is also a family link. Now, just imagine 2 weeks before you go on vacation to Egypt. In 2010, I was deciding where to go for a vacation that year. And Egypt came to mind. But I knew just by intuition and by gut feeling that this was more than just a simple vacation. There was something more that was needed to be done. And then 10 days before I actually went to Egypt, because I booked the flight, I booked the hotel, I'd booked certain activities ahead of time, which were to go to the Great Pyramid, to go to Giza, to go to the Cairo Museum, to spend some time with the Bedouin tribe in the Sinai Desert, and so on and so on. And 10 days before I went, I received an email from a psychic medium in Scotland who said that she had a message for me from what she described as spiritual counsel. I have that exact message now, and I will read it verbatim, just so I don't make any mistakes. Now, this was 10 days before I went. I'd never come across this person before, and I'd never spoken to her before. She says, regarding your trip to Egypt, you need to look past the tourism, learn about her, understand her, and then teach about her. A messenger will find you. You will help uncover more insights and translate ancient knowledge brought to us from great distance. Under the Sphinx lies an ancient secret knowledge that will be added to your toolbox. Use this wisely for the benefit of all. All meaning past, present, and future. It all belongs together in the same place. You must absorb, accept, understand, and finally know. Only then can you share and teach. She also said in a sub-email that I needed to stand as close to the right-hand side of the Sphinx as was possible, which actually happened when I got there. But this was a really direct, personal email. And this kind of confirmed how I felt. I felt there was more to this trip than just a simple vacation, and that had confirmed it for me. Hence to say, from a third dimensional physical perspective, not a great deal happened. I went inside the Great Pyramid. I spent time on the Giza Plateau. I went to the Cairo Museum. I went into the desert, Sinai Desert, with the Bedouin tribe. But other than having a fantastic time, nothing seemed out of the ordinary. But what I now realize is that there were many things being unlocked within me. Now, 7 years later, 7 is an extremely important number. The mathematics of the Great Pyramid are 7 or divisible by 7. There are many secret doorways that you open by using the mathematics of 7. So 7 years later, in 2017, I was walking through a city street alone, and all of a sudden I heard a strange whoosh noise. And as I looked to my left, there was an Egyptian pharaoh walking alongside me. Now, where I was in my reality was the exact same. So this pharaoh had come into my time event and was just looking straight ahead. Now, as I saw him from the left, at the same time, I could also see him head on, and I could also see through his eyes. So it was a multi-directional encounter. He didn't say anything, he just walked straight ahead and then just disappeared. In the same set of days, I was in the living room of my own house one evening, and I looked up at one of the walls, and an Egyptian scarab beetle manifested out of the wall. So all of these things were beginning to happen, and many, many deep secrets of Egypt were starting to be downloaded and starting to come to me. But it had taken that sacred number 7 in order to do that. There'll be occasions even now when I'm sitting at this desk and I'll be writing some notes, either download or research. And all of a sudden, I am aware that I've gone back in a time slip to Egyptian pyramids. And I'm aware that it is me walking through the concrete floored temples. And I am aware that I have gone into this other time zone, this other time event. One of the experiences when I was there was this. You imagine that you're standing in the reception area of a hotel and you're waiting for the elevator. And you press the button in order to call the elevator. Now the elevator comes to the ground floor where you are. The doors open and you can see that there's a few people inside the elevator and they say, "I'm very sorry, we're on the wrong floor." They press the button, the elevator doors shut and the elevator disappears and you have to wait for the next circuit. When I was inside the Great Pyramid, I had such an experience, but it was done through a change in vibrational frequency. And there was an instant when I looked up and saw someone who just appeared. And I said to them, "Are you in the wrong frequency?" And they adjusted their frequency and they disappeared. So the analogy of the elevator is correct, but they were doing it in a frequency adjustment way. So the Great Pyramid, let me just cover it in brief for you. And again, I will use some of my whiteboards just so that there's a little bit of visualization. So the Great Pyramid is 481 feet tall. So mathematically, there is a thing called digital summation. And what that means is you take a long number and you separate the numbers as individual entities. Now, when I did that, I did 4 plus 8 plus 1, which equals 13. I then took the original height of the Great Pyramid and divided by the 13. So it's 481 divided by 13. That gives you 37. Now, the number 37 is the numerical value of Christ. So Christ is encrypted within the height and the mathematics of the Great Pyramid. So the Great Pyramid is mathematically the tomb of Christ, but also Mary Magdalene, as I will move on to shortly. Now, the Egyptians call the pyramids the granary of the pharaohs. Now, a granary is where we keep grain. Now, the word Christ, when you analyze the different sections of the word, means grain. Now, when you look at the sarcophagus of the Egyptian god Osiris, you'll see that on some of the depictions, there is grain growing from the sarcophagus. The grain relates to the seed of knowledge. So if you wish to spread that seed of knowledge, you break bread. That may seem a recognizable story when you look at the Last Supper. But if you don't wish to share that knowledge, the bread is unbroken, as we can see on the Last Supper depiction on the painting of Leonardo da Vinci. So we have Christ, which is grain, and we have the pyramid, which is the granary of the pharaohs. Now, in the likes of Islam, when they fast, when they eat, they break fast, which is breakfast. So then, we have Christ and the cross. Now, the cross is the body, and it is the body that we have to carry. The cross we have to bear. The crown of thorns of Christ is worldliness. Now, when we look at the building blocks, the cornerstone that the builders rejected, that means the external world. So when you go into these temples, when you go into the Sphinx, when you go into the pyramids, for example, you are excluding yourself from the external world. That is the cornerstone that the builders rejected. Now, this is always northeast, because north is dark and east is light. You are moving from light, from dark to light. So we have the Masonic square, we have the crown of thorns of Christ and the cross itself, and we now have the pyramids that relate to Christ and Osiris. On the 17th level of the Great Pyramid, you have the entrance, and you have two chevrons above the entrance. which means Shibua, the word Shibua. Now, the word Shibua means where the two worlds meet. Those two worlds are the past and the future, because the Great Pyramid is originally 0 point. Now, what happens is you have a memory loop of future and past that goes through 0 point in the center. Now, this is also where Nikola Tesla went when he claimed that he went to a time where all times merged. He was talking about 0 point, and that was originally the prime meridian, the Great Pyramid. Now, the importance about the number 17 is if I add up all the numbers from 1 to 17, I get 153. 153 is the numerical value of Mary Magdalene, which is why I said that the Great Pyramid is also the tomb of Mary Magdalene, again, which I'll go into in a moment. But still on the subject of grain, when we have the right and the left eye of Horus, some people say that it relates to the sun and the moon. It does, but there's a much deeper reason as to why that is. Now, each of the eye, when you look at Egyptian eye fractions, gives us the number 64. Now, 2 64s is 128. Now, in mathematics, the factors of 128 are 1, 2, 4, 8, 16, 32, and 64. Now, if you look at Egyptian eye fractions, you will see that it is 1 over 64, 2 over 64, 4 over 64, 8 over 64, 16 over 64, 32 over 64, and 63 over 64. Now, this relates to completion, but it also relates to Egyptian grain measurements. So now we can see that the Christ, the Osiris, the Great Pyramid, the granary of the pharaohs, and the 2 eyes of Horus relate to grain, relate to knowledge. Now, the grain, when it is in the ground, waiting to grow, waiting for that divine moment, takes in the energy of the sun and the energy of the moon. And this is the deeper mystical meaning as to why we have association with the sun and the right eye and the moon and the left eye. It relates to grain, the knowledge. So now let me go into the Mary Magdalene aspect. So as I've said, when you add 1 to 17, which is the course level of the Great Pyramid, you get 153. Now, when you go into the Grand Gallery, there are 153 steps, and it is 153 feet long. Christ's ministry lasted 153 weeks. Christ and the apostles caught exactly 153 fish. So now we'll begin to see the secret meaning. We have really the creation and the source of all geometric form, the Vesica Piscis, which is 2 crossover circles. Now inside we have what is known as the mandorla, which means almond. Now almond means your hidden essence. It's why we have the elongated eyes in Egypt, for instance. But if you look at the mandorla from left to right, it has a unit size of 153. Again, Mary Magdalene has a numerical value of 153. So it is saying that Mary Magdalene is the wisdom of the womb. Now, the first geometric shape is the triangle, which also relates to the Holy Trinity, where 1 becomes 3 and 3 becomes 1. It is equal. So the triangle fits inside the mandorla. The triangle is 180 degrees, always. Now 180 is pi. So Mary Magdalene Day, the Feast of Mary Magdalene, is on the 22nd of July, which is 22 over 7, which is an abbreviation of pi. So whoever created, Mary Magdalene is incorporating the message that I'm now revealing to you. It is the triangle, the first geometric shape, birthed from the source of all geometric form, the Vesica Piscis. It is also the firstborn of Egypt. But also, from the mandorla, we also get the Christian fish. And the fish really relates to the individual awareness that comes out of the universal ocean. So we have this cosmic sea, and the individual fish, which are the individual people, are the fishes from the cosmic ocean. It is that individual awareness. So now let's bring the 153 and the Vesica Piscis back to the Great Pyramid, the tomb of both Christ and Mary Magdalene. So the Great Pyramid and other pyramids, for instance, have 4 sides, which are really 4 triangles. 180 times 4 is 720. Now, when we put the 2 circles together to form the Vesica Piscis, we have 2 360-degree shapes. So 360 plus 360 is 720. So now we have a connection between the Great Pyramid and the Vesica Piscis, Christ and Mary Magdalene, and sacred geometry. So the Great Pyramid is therefore the hidden essence. It is the Mary Magdalene, the Sophia, the wisdom, the secret teachings, and it is the teachings that are conveyed by symbols and allegory. It is the mystery of Christ. It is the mystery of Mary Magdalene. Now, as I've said on other videos, that science is capturing many radar images inside the Great Pyramid, and they are noting lots of cavities. When they approach these cavities, they are blocked by stones, and they can't access the cavities. But what they don't realize is that those stones are doorways, and you can open those doorways by saying a correct word at the correct time with the correct vibration. And that vibration has to be a third eye and voice alignment in order for the doors to open. Now, this third eye and voice alignment also relates to the lost word of Freemasonry that many Masons throughout the world are trying to find. It is a word that, according to Masonic legend, died with Hiram Abiff in the Temple of Solomon because he refused to reveal that word. And according to Masonic legend, he suffered a death as a result. In a future podcast, I will reveal exactly what that lost word is. And for any Freemasons who watch this podcast, you will then have information that none of your peers have, which is the lost word of Freemasonry. And it relates to a particular word, the sonic of a particular word. So the Great Pyramid is many things. The Great Pyramid replicates the mind. It replicates Christ. The Great Pyramid is really the Redeemer. It gave rise to the domes that we see around the world, because the vertical and horizontal forces of the dome relate to the slope angle of the Great Pyramid, which is again something I will cover in a different episode. So what is the age of the Great Pyramid? We are told by the mainstream, of course, that it's around about 3,500 years old. We are told that it was built by Hebrew slaves. There were no Hebrew slaves in Egypt at the time, so we can rule that out. The pyramid, and I'm specifically talking today about the Great Pyramid, was built using sound. It was mapped out from another planet of the solar system, and it was created by sound. It is an antenna to and from the stars. It uses corrected real pi in order to become the perfect antenna. We use pi as 3.141, but the likes of NASA are realizing that it's slightly too short. It is a fraction out. Their coils are slightly too short. Their trajectory back into Earth is slightly too short. That's because they're using pi at 3.141. When we use a mobile or cell device, there is a 0.22 second of a delay because we are using slightly incorrect pi. Now, if you use the Great Pyramid through phi, which is how nature reveals her secrets, nature being Isis, when you get the Great Pyramid and the base of the Great Pyramid, which is the number 4, and you divide that by the square root of phi, it gives you corrected pi, which is 3.144. If NASA were to use 3.144, then their coils wouldn't be too short, there wouldn't be a delay in their transmissions, and their trajectory back into Earth wouldn't be slightly too short. So the Great Pyramid is also teaching us as the perfect antenna, which is powered by the crystalline base, the stones in the base. It is telling us true pi. So the 3,500 year age of the Great Pyramid is not correct. It goes to say that everything that we're told in the mainstream is not correct. History is not correct. The reasons for these buildings are not correct. So let me tell you how I worked out the age of the Great Pyramid. I worked out that there are 204 tiers, 204 levels. And I've already said about the entrance, which is on the 17th level. I know through looking deeply into Egyptian astronomy that they work on 360-year cycles. So what I did is I timed 360 by 204, which gave me 73,400 years. That is how old the Great Pyramid is. 73,400 years old. I've done many other different mathematics as well in relation to those numbers. Let me just share just a few of them. So if I take 73,440 and I divide it by 204, the amount of tiers of the pyramid, I also get 360. If I take away the zeros from 204 and 360, I get 36 times 24, which gives me 864. Now, that is really 86,400, which is the diameter of the sun, and also the amount of seconds in 24 hours. Now, the word hours is an anagram of Horus, so it is all contained. Now, again, when I take these numbers, 3 times 6 times 2 times 4, it gives me 144. I mentioned in the introduction that 144 is a light code that I found in space travel, in Da Vinci's paintings, in the Sphinx, in the Great Pyramid. All of these things relate to 144 light code. It is the speed of light in nautical miles. It is the 144,000 with Christ, because the harmonic of 144,000 is 144. So it is all relating to the same thing. Now, when we get 144, of course, 1 plus 4 plus 4 gives us 9, which relates to a higher understanding, which relates to a higher consciousness, because the word consciousness simply means a higher understanding. Those who were being initiated in these sacred places would, by sound, by vibration, allow their soul to exit their physical body. And that soul, or the expression that became them, would go up the pyramid shafts and go into certain star systems. They were star traveling, and they were given certain codes in meditation in order to get through the dimensional gateways that were guarded. But we are told by science, modern day science, that we have the likes of light years. And let's take Sirius A as an example. We are told that it would take somebody from Earth just over 8 light years to get to Sirius A. But a light year is how long it takes light to travel in a year. But it is not correct. You see, in between what we know as the time and space continuum, there are portals. And these portals, which I have personally witnessed, create zero time. There is a place in between the time and space continuum that gives you instantaneous travel to anywhere in the universe. Now, in future episodes, I will tell you exactly how these craft from so-called other worlds are able to create zero time and zero displacement, so that their starting point is in the exact same moment as the conclusion of their journey. So in other words, there is no distance. And in the same way, there is no distance for travel across the universe. And I came up with a mathematical equation for that finding, which is VT equals 0. So I came up with that. And then months later, I was looking through some of Isaac Newton's work and noted that he'd actually mentioned the exact same equation. I will detail in future podcasts how I'm actually working with Newton, Tesla, and Da Vinci. Hence the reason this is called the Da Vinci Secrets. So then, there is instantaneous travel from here to anywhere in the universe. We don't need light years. We don't need all of this exaggerated time to get from point A to B. We can do it in an instant. These great cultures of the past, many of them were elongated skull hybrids. They were the builders of these monuments. I will go into detail more about them in future episodes. But to suffice to say, the Great Pyramid is not a tomb for Khufu. It was not built by Hebrew slaves. It is not 3,500 years old. This, quite frankly, is in error. It is incorrect. We have been given a false picture. The Great Pyramid is the Great Redeemer. I have mathematically worked out that between now and 2050, and I don't for 1 minute believe that it will be anywhere near that long, but between now and 2050, the pyramid will be fully reactivated. That is the return of the Redeemer. The Great Pyramid was built to contain the knowledge of the universe. It contains the consciousness level of humanity. It has an antenna that beams that consciousness level to what I call the universal library, because all of the information that is in the universe has been inputted by the different races of that universe. And those who have this higher knowledge contribute more and contribute with greater accuracy. The universal mind then takes that information in order to evolve. This is the Great Pyramid. It is an antenna to and from the stars. It is an electrical conduit. It is a static electric storage. It is more than we are ever told. It replicates the higher mind. Of course, continue to come back to the Great Pyramid, the Giza Plateau, to Egypt, to Stonehenge, to all of these wonderful places during these weekly podcasts. When the Bible says, "Thou shalt not steal," what it really means is thou shalt not steal the sacred knowledge that is rightfully yours. I will reveal the wisdom that you are allowed to know, that you should know, that you are entitled to know. but it has been kept from you for so long. Things are about to change. Thank you very much for watching this episode, and I look forward to seeing you next week.